It's incredible how something as simple as a women-led dinner, at that can spark a firestorm of criticism when the guest list includes Meghan Markle. Recently, the publication Feminegra ran a piece titled Emma Grede's Women-Led Dinner, attended by Meghan Sussex, mocked as tasteless by UK press. The article highlighted not just the event itself, but the shocking way the British tabloids turned a celebration of women into yet another round of ridicule aimed squarely at Meghan. This wasn't a political summit or a lavish royal banquet. It was a private dinner hosted by Emma Grede, the brilliant businesswoman behind brands like Good American and Skims, gathering influential women in Los Angeles to connect, share stories, and uplift one another. The atmosphere was described as warm, inclusive, and empowering, a table full of founders, creators, and change-makers, including Meghan Markle, whose attendance should have been celebrated for what it symbolized: women in power, supporting other women. But, as Feminegra pointed out, the UK press had other plans. One British columnist, William Sitwell, from The Telegraph, penned a column calling the event the ghastliest, most grotesque, most vulgar, most shallow, most revolting, most tasteless, most vacuous, and most vainglorious dinner party in history. Yes, that's an actual quote. He wasn't describing a scandal or an extravagant royal feast. He was describing a dinner hosted by a black female entrepreneur and attended by accomplished women, one of whom was Meghan Markle. And here's the twist. The very same writer, in another piece, described a state banquet at Windsor Castle for Donald Trump as magnificent and splendid. 2 dinners, 2 gatherings of the powerful. One is regal, the other vulgar. The only difference? Who was at the table and who set the table? This, right here, is what Feminegra was calling out. Not just the insult, but the pattern. When women, and particularly women of colour, gather in their own spaces to celebrate success and connection, it's seen as self-indulgent. When men do the same, it's seen as diplomacy, leadership, or tradition. Let's unpack that. First, the dinner itself. Emma Grede hosted what she called a seat at the table, an intimate gathering of women leaders, business founders, designers, philanthropists, and yes, celebrities. The goal was simple: create a space where women could share their journeys honestly. No pretense, no competition, just conversation and collaboration. Guests reportedly discuss mentorship, financial independence, and creativity in the modern economy. Meghan attended quietly, without fanfare. She didn't give a speech, pose for press photos, or use it as a PR stunt. She showed up as a participant, not as the spectacle the tabloids wanted her to be. And yet, once her presence was revealed, the headlines shifted the entire tone of the story. Suddenly, the dinner wasn't about Emma Grede's vision. It was about how tasteless the whole thing was, because Meghan was there. Let's be clear, Meghan didn't host it. She didn't design the menu. She didn't even promote it on her platforms. But her attendance was enough to spark outrage in the UK press. Why? Because her mere existence in a positive, empowered setting still unsettles parts of the British media. Now, let's talk about that double standard. The British media has long had a complicated relationship with Meghan Markle. For years, they've painted her as too ambitious, too outspoken, too glamorous, too American, take your pick. When she's charitable, she's performative. When she's quiet, she's cold. When she smiles, she's faking it. And when she builds something or supports other women who do, she's pretentious. This dinner is another chapter in that same story. The irony? When Meghan's father-in-law, King Charles, attends lavish banquets dripping in diamonds and gold cutlery, the press gushes about heritage, elegance and diplomacy. But when Meghan sits at a dinner table full of self-made women, eating a vegan meal in Los Angeles, it's vacuous. What does that say about society's comfort with female success, particularly women of colour who own their success unapologetically? Feminegra's article dives right into this hypocrisy. It notes that Emma Grede's dinner was, in many ways, a celebration of the very things the British establishment often claims to value: entrepreneurship, leadership, community. And yet, because it wasn't hosted in a castle, because it didn't involve monarchs or politicians, and because Meghan Markle was in the room, the narrative became one of mockery. The article even points out how the Telegraph's tone mirrors older colonial tropes, where gatherings of empowered women of colour are portrayed as too loud or too showy. That language, vulgar, revolting, shallow, doesn't just critique a dinner. It reinforces an image that powerful women of colour are never quite respectable enough, no matter what they do. And that's the part of the story that deserves the spotlight. Let's talk about Meghan's perspective. We've seen Meghan grow into her own since stepping away from royal duties. She's building her own narrative, her own ventures, and surrounding herself with people who share her values. Her presence at a dinner like this wasn't random. It's aligned with everything she's been working toward: women's empowerment, entrepreneurship, and redefining success outside traditional institutions. Remember her Archetypes podcast? It was literally about dismantling labels: the ambitious woman, the diva, the difficult one. This dinner was the real-life extension of that conversation. A space where women didn't have to shrink themselves to fit someone else's comfort level. And in showing up, Meghan once again became a target for the very labels she spent years challenging. That's the irony. She stands for women owning their stories, and in doing so, she becomes a lightning rod for criticism from those who fear that kind of independence. Let's contrast the optics. When male billionaires host exclusive dinners, the media calls them power summits. When the royal family hosts a glittering banquet, it's statecraft. When Meghan and other women entrepreneurs dine together, it's tasteless. The only difference is gender and power: who has it, and who's allowed to display it. What's so tasteless about women celebrating women? About Emma Grede, a self-made businesswoman from East London, creating her own version of a royal banquet, one that isn't about lineage, but about lived experience. To the critics, it's unacceptable because it flips the hierarchy. It's women setting their own table instead of begging for a seat at someone else's. And that's exactly why Meghan's presence matters so much. The symbolism runs deep. For years, Meghan was forced to play a supporting role in an institution built around tradition, hierarchy, and male-led authority. Now she's in a space where women lead the conversation. No protocols, no curtsies, no centuries-old rules, just shared values. It's that freedom that unnerves the press. Because a woman who's free financially, socially, emotionally can't be controlled. Meghan's participation in Emma Grede's dinner isn't about optics. It's about evolution. It's about a woman redefining power on her own terms. Let's talk about what the press conveniently ignores. While tabloids obsessed over the dinner's tone and image, they completely skipped over the fact that Emma Grede's businesses employ thousands of women and promote inclusive sizing and diversity in fashion. They ignored that Meghan herself has invested time and money in supporting small female-led ventures through initiatives like SmartWorks and the Archewell Foundation. They ignored that these dinners often lead to mentorship, funding and collaboration opportunities for young female entrepreneurs. Instead, they zoomed in on outfits, table decor and who sat next to whom. The misogyny isn't subtle. It's baked into how the story is told. Here's something Feminegra wrote that really stood out. The dinner wasn't a spectacle until the British media made it one. Its real offence wasn't excess, it was empowerment. That line captures it perfectly. The backlash wasn't about money or glamour. It was about the discomfort that arises when women, especially women who've been vilified, refuse to disappear quietly. Now, let's zoom out. What does this moment tell us about Meghan's current trajectory? She's no longer trying to please the British establishment. She's building a global community that aligns with her values, creative, progressive, female-driven. Every move she makes now, from her upcoming brand launches to her collaboration centres on autonomy. And that's why she's still so polarising. Not because she's doing anything wrong, but because she refuses to fit the mould that others designed for her. This dinner was never going to be just a dinner to the tabloids, because Meghan's presence, even in the background, is enough to trigger old insecurities about power shifting. Let's also acknowledge Emma Grede here. She represents what modern leadership looks like, not inherited, but earned. She built her empire through hard work, intelligence and innovation. She invited Meghan not because of royal ties, but because Meghan embodies the values of the event: resilience, reinvention, leadership. By mocking that dinner, the British media weren't just taking a jab at Meghan, they were sneering at the entire idea of women rewriting the rules. Let's talk numbers and optics for a second. In 2025, women-owned businesses are among the fastest-growing sectors globally. Yet coverage of female entrepreneurship still skews toward celebrity gossip rather than business achievement. By choosing to attend Emma Grede's event not as a speaker but as a supporter, Meghan helped shift the spotlight back onto women leading industries, not just headlines. She used her influence not to dominate the narrative, but to amplify it. That's power used purposefully. There's also a personal layer here. Think about Meghan's journey from Hollywood actress to royal outsider to independent entrepreneur. Every phase of her life has been scrutinized, dissected, and reinterpreted through someone else's lens. So when she chooses to align with a circle of women who are creating their own paths, it's not accidental. It's healing. It's reclamation. She's surrounding herself with the kind of women who see her not as a tabloid headline, but as a peer, someone who understands the grind, the criticism, the resilience it takes to rebuild your narrative after it's been ripped apart. And yet, despite all this, the British tabloids continue to reduce her to caricature. They can't see the nuance, the growth, the maturity. They only see what fits the narrative they've spent years crafting. Meghan, the troublemaker. Meghan, the outsider. Meghan, the attention seeker. But what they're missing is the version of Meghan that the world sees now: calm, confident, and quietly strategic. A woman who shows up when it matters, who partners with other women doing meaningful work, who doesn't need validation from institutions that once tried to silence her. That's not tasteless, that's powerful. So what do we take away from all this? When a woman like Meghan shows up in spaces designed for women, she's not seeking attention, she's claiming her right to exist without apology. When the press mocks that, it's not about dinner, it's about discomfort with change, with equality, with the shifting idea of who gets to be powerful. Feminegra captured it best. The British press didn't just mock a dinner. They mocked what happens when women decide they no longer need permission to be powerful. That's the real story. Emma Grede's dinner wasn't the worst in history. It was one of the most symbolic. Because every time women gather to uplift each other, there's a ripple effect. Someone watching sees what's possible. Someone dreaming of launching their own idea feels inspired. Someone told she's too much learns that maybe, just maybe, she's exactly enough. And Meghan Markle, sitting at that table, not hosting, not commanding, just being, reminds us that presence itself can be an act of quiet rebellion. The critics can mock all they want, but they can't undo the message. That women, all women, deserve to build, celebrate, and exist in spaces free of ridicule. And Meghan, through grace and persistence, continues to show us exactly how that's done. So yes, they called it tasteless. But maybe what's truly tasteless is the hypocrisy of a media industry that praises men for power and punishes women for the same. Meghan didn't need a throne to be influential. She just needed a seat at the table. And now that she has one, she's making sure other women have theirs too. That's not vulgar. That's visionary. And no headline can take that away.